watching Shalom TV, celebrating Jewish culture.
Jewish Education and Media is pleased to present L'Chaim, a program that highlights the people, issues, and events of importance to the Jewish community. Now here is your host, Rabbi Mark Golub.
At 9:05 p.m. on a Monday night in November 1990, the 18th of Cheshvan, 5751, in a conference room at the Marriott Hotel on Manhattan's East Side, a man walked to the front of the room and put a bullet into the neck of Rabbi Meir Kahane. The Brooklyn-born rabbi, 58 years old, who'd moved to Israel to live on the West Bank, had just completed an address to a gathering of his supporters. It was the last address he would ever give, for an hour later, at Bellevue Hospital, Meir Kahane was pronounced dead from that gunshot wound. It took my breath away when I heard that Meir Kahane had been assassinated. And while I'm sure there were some in the Jewish community who shed no tears for a man they felt only preached violence himself, many, many more, even many who did not share his views, were truly saddened by his death. Although I often disagreed with Meir Kahane, I liked him personally very much. And over the years, hosting L'Chaim, I enjoyed his company both on and off microphone and camera. He was bright, charismatic, a superb debater with a wry sense of humor. And he was a man of passion and conviction in a world where conviction is often an endangered species. And he wasn't afraid to take the consequences of his conviction. He went to jail many times for the things he believed in. He took the Torah and his understanding of Torah law seriously. And he believed Jews shouldn't be pushed around, not by gangs of thugs in Brooklyn, not by a repressive government in the Soviet Union, not by the American administration, nor the French, nor the British, nor the Germans, and certainly not by Arabs in Israel. And so in the early 60s, Meir Kahane founded the JDL, the Jewish Defense League, to protect elderly Jews walking the streets of New York. And he coined the phrase, now used by Jews worldwide, never again, a reference, of course, to the slaughter of 6 million Jews in the Shoah, the Holocaust. He fought against the Soviet imprisonment of Jews long before it became part of the agenda of mainstream Jewry. And he spent a year in jail for conspiracy to build bombs to use against Soviet offices here in the United States. And when he made Aliyah with his family, he founded the Kach party in Israel, was elected to the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, and preached Jewish nationalism in the Jewish state. And he was not afraid to buck the establishment, the American Jewish establishment, which systematically denied him a platform in the United States, and the political establishment in Israel, which also sought to silence him whenever and however they could. And so they forbid him from appearing on state radio and television. And when it looked like he might win too many seats in the Knesset, they banned his Kach party on the grounds that it was racist. But still, Meir Kahane persisted, daring to question the quality and nature of Jewish education in the state of Israel, now a routine issue in Israel, daring to question the Zionist fervor of Jewish leaders who remain in the United States, daring to say there are inherent conflicts between America's notion of Jeffersonian democracy and the Jewish state, daring to say that demographics threaten the future of the Jewish character of the State of Israel long before it became a mantra in support of a two-state solution. and daring to say that Jews have the right to fight back with physical force when others prevent them from living in peace. I always thought he should have the right to address the American Jewish community, and that people were making a big mistake by trying to silence him. And I found that while alive, he was one of the three individuals American Jews wanted to hear most, along with the late Abba Eban and the profoundly important Elie Wiesel. And whenever I was with him in public, I was struck by the way in which average Jews gravitated to him, always coming up to him, saying hello, to thank him, to tell him they were behind him. He was their hero, especially within the Sephardic community. And they felt safer as Jews because they knew he was there to defend them and Jews everywhere in the world. And I was proud that on L'chaim, he had the chance to express his views, and that viewers, you, had the chance to hear what he had to say firsthand and to judge the man for yourself. And in this anniversary month of his passing, I'd like to replay for you some of the moments Meir Kahane shared with the L'chaim audience over the years. And you may be surprised to find that some of the ideas now circulating within mainstream Jewish life were those expressed by Meir Kahane.
I think that the reason why I am barred is precisely because the Jewish leaders know exactly what I say and are terrified that if the average Jew hears it, he'll say, you know, he's right. And it's not a mistake that they make, of course it is, but it's worse than that. I think it's obscene. I think that if a Jesse Jackson would contact the average temple or synagogue and say, I'd like to come and die, they would roll out the red carpet for him. If an Arab would come, they would say, of course, let's have dialogue. Yet if I come, they say no, and the answer is simple. I'm more dangerous to them than these people are, because I pose ideas which challenge the very basis of all of their thinking. No Jew wants to hear that Western democracy and Zionism are incompatible. He doesn't want to hear that. So he flees from it, he runs from it, and of course it doesn't go away. It goes where it becomes worse. I die to debate people.
I know.
I love to debate people, but they won't debate me. I've had here 1, 2, 3, but that's about it.
Well, it's hard to get somebody who would sit with you to debate you.
That's true.
Part of the sadness of it.
I want to show you something. You know, Rita Hauser went off to Stockholm for a massage with Arafat. I asked her if she would meet with me in debate, and she said no. You see, Arafat doesn't threaten her concepts and her views, and I do. If any Arab tomorrow morning would convert, become Jewish, he would be accepted by me as a Jew. He would be just as Jewish as Meir Kahane. That isn't racism. What I'm raising is the very obvious and truthful and painful question that Israel was created as a Jewish state, and a Jewish state, by definition, must be in the hands of the Jewish people, and that there is a basic contradiction between that and Western democracy as it is known in Connecticut or in New York or in this country. Any Jew who says that Israel can be a Jewish state and a democratic state is either a fool or worse, a knave. If the Arabs have a right to the vote, it's not a question of 10% of the population being Arabs. What happens if they're 51%? Do they still have that right? The great tragedy is that people run away from painful questions. And my painful question is, do the Arabs have a right to sit quietly, stop throwing Molotov cocktails, have babies, make love, not war, every night, become the majority, elect 61 Arabs to the Knesset, which is the majority, and then vote Israel out of existence as the Jewish state, just as the Jews voted it in as the Jewish state when they had the majority. And by the way, Israel has as its basic law the law of return, which says that only Jews have an automatic right to come to Israel. If Ben-Gurion had not passed that bill, and I would have introduced that, you know what they would have called me. I am for democracy for every single Jew. I may not be happy with many Jews there, and believe me, I am not. Nevertheless, Israel has to be a democracy for all Jews, because otherwise there will be a civil war. Mm-hmm. And a civil war is the last thing that I will ever contemplate. I think that Arabs not only cannot live with Jews, but I think that Arabs cannot live with Arabs. Every time I look at Lebanon, I'm deeply impressed and indeed moved by how Arabs live with Arabs. Shiites and Sunni and Druze and Christian, Hezbollah and Amal massacring each other. I don't believe him, not a word. When he says that he renounces terrorism, all right, fine. The difference is that he doesn't believe that what the PLO does to Israel is terrorism, but rather national liberation. When he accepts the pertinent resolutions of the UN, that's true. All of them, including 181, the one of 1947, which they turned down. And when he says that he recognizes Israel, well, that's fine. Let me tell you some of the things that I recognize as existing. Earthquakes, disease. Of course I recognize them, they exist, but I recognize them in the hope of doing away with them. Mm-hmm. I don't trust the man, and secondly, they start 4 wars with us, kill thousands of our soldiers, and then they think that they can start over again. Losers lose, and especially losers who started wars. Now, having said all of that, I believe that Israel, and I've said it for 15 years already, Israel should have long ago have sat down with the PLO. Long ago.
Interesting.
Of course, not Rita Hauser, the government of Israel. And quite clear. Why? Because they represent the Palestinians. Of course they do. If not them, who? The Hadassah? Mm-hmm. Of course the PLO does.
I want to make sure I understand. Meir Kahane says that it would be appropriate for the state of Israel to sit in negotiation across a table from Yasser Arafat and the PLO.
I said that that we should sit down with them because they represent Palestinians, and that says a great deal about the Palestinians. Because these are murderers, vicious people, but they are the representatives. Sit down with them and tell them no.
So why are you this smart and the Israeli government has disagreed with you up till now?
If I began to understand the government of Israel, I would be in deep, deep trouble.
Okay, then I'll tell you. The Israeli government says that the PLO has never recognized the state of Israel, has done terrible terrorist acts of murder against the Israeli people, and that you don't sit down and negotiate across a table with people who refuse to recognize your right to exist. Well, why do you disagree with that?
Because if you want to speak with your enemy, you've got to speak with the people who are the leaders. Now, I'll sit down with them and I'll tell them, no, you're not getting anything from us.
Nothing?
Nothing from us. Mm-hmm. But if you like Jordan, and if you like a state, we'll help you get Jordan. Mm-hmm. That's the solution. Now, if they don't like it, we sat down with them. And because I don't believe, I think that when Israel says we'll sit down with Hussein and not with the PLO, what they have done is they've created the myth that there are moderate Arabs and there are extremist Arabs. Mm-hmm. There's no such thing. There are 2 kinds of Arabs, stupid ones and clever ones. The stupid ones say what they mean. Jews out. The clever ones mean the same thing. What makes if Assad of Syria tomorrow morning asks Israel to let's sit down, of course they would sit down. Who is more dangerous to Israel, Assad or this unshaven head of the PLO?
Assad, to be sure.
Of course. You sit down with your enemy, but you tell them, no, this land is ours. It's not yours. You had an opportunity in 1947 to have it. You said no. You went to war. You gambled. You lost. You lost. You lose. However, our solution for you is, because we are basically Jews and therefore kind, we will give you a state called Jordan. Because what in the world makes Jordan legal? Mm-hmm. Jordan was part of a League of Nations mandate to the British to create a Jewish state on both sides of the Jordan, and they cut away the East Bank in 1922 in typical perfidy, and they gave it to the grandfather of this present king. It's not a legal state, so if Arafat wants it, fine. We'll help you get it, and you can call it Palestine.
But you're not willing to make any territorial compromise with the Palestinians.
Of course not. It's my land. It's not theirs. It's my land. When Sadat wanted the Sinai back, I was impressed. He said, I want every grain of sand. It's Egyptian sand. And I said, that's a person with national pride. I understand the Arabs, and they understand me, and neither of us can begin to understand certain Jews. And
I want to know whether you feel Israel can stand up to whatever pressure is brought by America and Western Europe and the United Nations.
Of course it can. The UN is not relevant. Western Europe is not relevant. The only relevant, possible relevant threat is America, because it gives money. First of all, I must tell you this, that I believe that American economic aid to Israel doesn't help Israel, it hurts Israel. I believe that Israel has become an economic basket case. It isn't even, it's not a state, it's a shul. It walks on with a pushka, getting money from Ba. A state doesn't live off charity, off loans, off grants. Israel needs private capital, free initiative, capitalism. Let private capital come in and build that state well. I don't want the money for that from America. That makes us an economic junkie getting his annual fix. That's the first thing. Secondly, what in the world makes you think that America backs Israel because Israel is nice? Countries back other countries out of self-interest. And on the day that America feels that it is not to its self-interest to back Israel, it will not back Israel, even if Abba Eban would be the prime minister, God forbid. And my final answer is as a rabbi. You know, once upon a time, the Jew was a Jew of faith. We believed in the burning bush. And now we believe in George Bush. It's an incredible thing. Of course we have faith. I believe that Israel is God's hand. A people that wanders the earth for 1,900 years and suffers what we suffered and comes back to its own land, just as the Bible says. You think this is an ordinary thing? It just happens, stam kacha? Of course not. But Jews don't have faith. No one has faith. Not even Orthodox Jews have faith. They daven, Ele v'rechav, ele v'susim, these may come with horses and chariots, but we have God. And then they, take off their tefillin, take a little schnapps, talk politics. Well, we have to compromise because otherwise Bush won't give us horses and chariots. 5 minutes ago, nobody hears what he davens. Nobody believes it. I think that God is stronger than George Bush. And if he isn't, he doesn't exist. I want an exchange of populations. We took in 800,000 Sephardic Jews from Arab countries. Give them our Arabs. I don't hate Arabs. I love Jews. I think violence is a terrible thing when it is wrong to use it. I think violence is a mitzvah when it is a mitzvah to use it. And when the Bible says there's a time for war and a time for peace, I didn't write the Bible. And when the rabbis tell us if one comes to slay you, slay him first, that may not be Gandhi, but Gandhi wasn't a Jew, and I'm a Jew, and that is Judaism.
Now, how does that pertain to the current situation?
Well, certainly, I don't walk around beating up Arabs. Indeed, we have made it clear that any Arab who is prepared to accept the fact that Israel is a Jewish state and is willing to live in Israel as a non-citizen with all his personal rights must be allowed to stay in the country, must be treated on a personal level exactly as we treat a Jew.
May I have you repeat that, because many people do not hear you say this. You are prepared to allow any Arab to in effect be what the Bible calls a ger toshav, a resident alien who has every right but political rights. Is that correct?
Of course. I am bound by halacha. I am an Orthodox rabbi. Halacha binds me, and that is halacha. That a non-Jew cannot be a citizen, but if he accepts that, then he must be treated in his personal life, in his personal rights, exactly as we treat a Jew.
Okay, well, I interrupted you. You were telling me this in the context of how you treat Arabs.
So, certainly, the ordinary Arab, if he would accept that, then has to be treated in this way. But if you're talking about Arabs who come out of a certain village and attack Jews, We have an intifada, 15 months in intifada. The same army that couldn't put down 4 Arab states in 6 days can't put down women and children because their hands are tied politically. Let's say you living on the West Bank, and your wife has to drive the children daily to the city to a school, and you don't know whether it be rocks or fire bombs and so on. I visited the families who were sitting shiva for a wife and 2 children burned alive and so on. What are we, crazy? What is this mercy for the cruel? The rabbis put it well when they said, one who has mercy upon the cruel is destined to be cruel unto the merciful. I put it to you that people who are worried about violence against our enemies are people who have guilt feelings about whether we really should be there. Mm-hmm. And that's a real problem. I'll use as much violence as is necessary to save a Jewish life, as much as is necessary. And if it is not necessary, I won't use any violence. Mm-hmm. And that's a clear statement as possible. I wonder how many Jews were bothered in World War II by the Allied fire bombings of Dresden and Berlin and so on. Did anybody protest? Who do you think we were killing? Killing the generals? Mm-hmm. We were fighting an entire people who were committed to victory, and if the Germans would have won, my God, the world would have been plunged into a nightmare. And so we used all force possible. And no one said, this isn't right, this isn't nice. Wars are never nice, mm-hmm. but they're necessary. I don't see Jewish liberals being angry when leftist soldiers say, I won't serve on the West Bank. So I see these are, of course, people of conscience. Well, what happens if Kahane finds out that the Israelis are now planning to pull out of the West Bank? And I say, if you want to go, fine, but we're staying. And the Arabs are not going to take this. Is that right? Is that wrong? It's never an easy matter to talk about obeying the law, because from the days of Socrates, it was always a question of conscience and so on. To me, and I've said this straight out in the Knesset, Torah law, God's law, transcends man's law. Mm. And the only thing that any state has the right to demand of me is that I take the consequences of my actions. I have never complained when I've gone to jail. Never. I know what I did. I did it willingly. I'll do it again, and I'm ready to take the consequences. I think there is an authentic Judaism, and then there is the non-authentic. I think that there's a tremendous, if you're talking about demagogues, I think that the reform and conservative movements have been demagogues in attempting to somehow get through the message to the average Jew here that we would make a reformed Jew a non-citizen or a second-class citizen. That's a lie. Every Jew is a Jew. And I don't have to defend my position on Jews. I sat in prison for a year here for Russian Jews, and I never asked whether they were Orthodox Jews or not. I was beaten by police and arrested tens of times in Brooklyn and in the Bronx, defending Jews from hoodlums. I never asked whether they were Orthodox Jews or not. Every Jew is a Jew. He's Orthodox, conservative, Reform, gay. If he's a Jew, he's a Jew. Mm-hmm. What we're talking about here is a non-Jew who wishes to become a Jew. Now, if you want to become a Jew, you have to follow the laws and not the in-laws. This is the point that I am trying to make, and I think that it's a tragedy that there is a split. It's not the Orthodox who are making the split. Your great-grandfather and the great-grandfather of every Jew living today knew that there was only one way that any non-Jew could become Jewish, and that was through halacha. The change was not made by Orthodox Jews. It was made by non-Orthodox Jews, by non-Orthodox rabbis. And I believe that the Kach movement, which is a Torah movement, an Orthodox group, and which succeeded in getting 80% of its voters from non-Orthodox Jews, show that it is possible to live. And I think that on any issue, including who's a Jew, there are ways that can be found within the halacha and yet not splitting the community. It's a question of goodwill on both sides, and the truth is that goodwill is lacking on both sides. It's a pleasure to take young Jews and just watch them open up as Jews. Tremendous pride. You watch their faces beaming. These are youngsters who never hear anybody except an apologetic professor from Israel, and they're beaten with guilt and with, no one can feel as guilty about anything as Jews can. Jews have honed it to a fine art. It's become the Jewish AIDS of our time. And suddenly you take these youngsters who don't want to feel guilty. No normal person wants to feel guilty. And you say to them, no guilt, my God, what are we guilty of? Wanting to live, to exist. And I love youth. I mean, just get me on campuses, but I have a problem there. Hillel has a national directive barring me from campuses.
Hillel has a national directive barring you.
A national directive. On campuses, I'm always sponsored either by non-Jews, or by some Jewish offshoot, some tiny group. But that doesn't matter because the place is filled.
The thoughts of the late Rabbi Meir Kahane. So, what are your thoughts? Were you surprised by any of the things Meir Kahane had to say? Did it change your perspective of him in any way? Please email me or write me this week with your thoughts. In many ways, with the assassination of Meir Kahane, an important voice was stolen from the world Jewish scene, a voice which, at the very least, forced other Jews to confront issues more honestly. And often, in response to Meir Kahane, issues and policies became clearer. And at his best, Meir Kahane inspired other Jews to care for the survival and well-being of the Jewish people in every corner of the world. Virtually every report of his murder in the New York Times, in other print media, on television, portrayed Meir Kahane's philosophy as anti-Arab and portrayed him as an Arab hater. Both characterizations seriously missed the mark. Meir Kahane simply wanted to protect Jews and to create one state on earth which the Jews could call their own and in which Jews could live in peace and unafraid. Again, often I personally disagreed with Meir Kahane, and he knew it. And I'm not making him out to be simply a Jewish hero or greater in death than he was in life. He was far too complicated for that. But I respected the man's integrity and his courage and his willingness to stand up to power, to Soviet power, to Arab power, even to Jewish power. And though he worked very hard at creating a fierce persona, especially on camera, in public, in reality, he was a gentle man who loved his wife and his children and his grandchildren, and who just yearned for a life of peace. And I believe history will be kind to Meir Kahane, and that with the perspective that comes with the passage of time, his contribution to Jewish life will be better understood and better appreciated. And I do hope that you appreciated the chance to hear him for yourself. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. L'chaim, my friends, to life.
I'm sick and tired of seeing Arabs with such pride and self-confidence and assurance, and having been beaten over and over again, saying, nevertheless, we will try again. And Jews having won again and again and again, saying, but we're tired. We're tired. We've fought for 40 years. We haven't fought for 40 years. We fought for 3,040 years. And if our Zetas and Bubbas would have been as tired as some of these Sabras are, there would be no Israel today, and there would be no Jewish people today. I'm not tired, and a great many people in Israel are not tired, because if you're tired, tomorrow morning you won't be around.